Welcome to One Up Fantasy, helping you one up the fantasy football competition. For the latest in Chicago sports news, visit ChiCitySports.com. And now, here are the hosts of One Up Fantasy, Stephen Johnson and Chris Jackle. Kaboom!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome in to One Up Fantasy, helping you one up the fantasy football competition, a part of Chi City Sports and the Tape Never Lies Network. I'm Stephen Johnson. He is Chris Jackle. We are back. We are rolling. It is week 3. It feels weird that we're already 2 weeks through. It's already feeling speedy, and I hate it. And I need it to be like week 1 again and just kind of reset and just kind of settle in, because some lineups not too hot. Too hot.
Sorry to hear that, my man. Welcome. Here we are, week 3. You're right. I can't believe it. Shit. I know I got a lot of wins on my team, though, on my side of the fence. I don't know about you. I did see a little post on our league that we're in that you might have had like worst manager of the week.
Did I?
I'm sorry.
Did I really?
Sleeper was shading you a little bit. I can't, I'm sorry. I don't make that up. So
I don't even know what I did wrong, but that's more of a problem with
I think you took an L though, right?
Yeah. Oh, I did. I definitely took an L. I know that much. I'm trying to remember what I even did wrong. I know I left somebody that scored a lot on my bench, and that's probably what led to it, but hey, we all
win
can't
some, you lose some. I was just saying, it's week 3. I'm hoping our people have a bunch of wins. Hopefully some of our advice is some sound, some sound advice. But nonetheless, welcome back, Mr. Johnson. You let Claudio and I kind of do a little something on the air last week, and Claudio I think's banned by the FCC now. But with all that being said, let's talk some fantasy football, dude.
Absolutely. Let's dive right into it. We have plenty to talk about. There's even more injuries. Since this is a Chicago-based show, I'd say we start off with the fun news of the weekend, and the news that's going to be even more fun come this following Sunday, and go from there. But later on, we'll be talking contender pretender about some of the hottest starts in the league thus far when it comes to fantasy and whether or not it's fraud or fortune. We'll go into a little speed run for that, as well as look at some of the biggest surprises through 2 weeks, as well as our panic meters over, are we a little concerned over some of these guys we thought was going to go hot and has been nothing but a nice brisk cold to start the season. Can they turn it around in week 3? Who knows? But we'll get to all of that. But like we said, we're going to dive right into it, and we're going to talk a little Justin Fields. He is starting, probably not under the circumstances that a lot of people expected him to, as Andy Dalton dealing with a bone bruise that is a week-to-week injury. Normally 3 to 4 weeks is probably what you're looking at.
Bullshit, though. I'm sorry to interject here, Stephen, but it's like, the typical timeline for this injury, if you don't tear your ACL, and I'm no doctor, but with all that being said, I've listened to enough, nonsense over the last couple of days where he should be out about a month. I mean, if that's conservative from some people's perspective. And with that being said, how can't you just come out and say, Fields is our dude, we're rolling with the punches, and we're going to make it work. We're going to work with his strengths, which helps fantasy owners, and we're going to get to that. But, at that press conference, and there's another show for that, but with the way that all played out with Nagy and his nonsense, and then the press people come in right after and say, well, Dalton's our guy if he's healthy. Well, fuck you guys. But back to fantasy, and we'll get to that tomorrow night with Phil and Shane. But, with all that, this is one up, and we need to get some advice in what the impact has on our guys, the fantasy players that you actually drafted. There's only a few. I think you could name 4 off, maybe 5, David Robinson.
Maybe so. I think we have a visitor that's knocking on my door here. Hi. Oh, you're going to hide now? Okay.
Oh, man, come on. I thought it was Claudio.
Good night, buddy.
Dilly.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Small children, gotta love them.
They're
Love my
beautiful. I'm telling
boys.
you, we were saying I got a sick one upstairs, and I'm hoping, he's got a doctor's appointment at 8:30 tomorrow. So we'll see. You know how it goes. The little ones in school and the whole nine. But back to
absolutely.
fantasy.
Yes. Again, we see, just again, like you mentioned, just a terrible communication pattern. We should be used to it at this time. They don't want to tip their hand that Justin Fields is starting, even though Jason Peters let it out of the bag today. But it is Justin Fields that is starting, in coming in for Andy Dalton last week. 6 of 13, 60 yards, no touchdowns, did throw a pretty ugly interception. And then on the ground, 10 carries, 31 yards. And he did have a fumble. He didn't lose it, mostly because of his hustle. I mean, there was some good, there was some bad. You saw the glimpses. But in terms of what he is, and in terms of what Justin Fields brings to the table, is this something that you consider an upgrade to the passing game for the Bears, specifically Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson?
I want to say yes. I would love to. We have an issue, and it's the guy we just talked about in Matt Nagy. He's too conservative with respects to going downfield. I mean, Mitch was I'm not going to get into that, but I just think that Justin Fields, he didn't work with the strengths when he had him out there. It's like he didn't even think he was going to play that much based on the preparation that he had, with respects to what Fields even said in the press conference. I'm nervous. I mean, in terms of getting Fields on your roster, I think he's available in about 47% of the leagues out there. So if that's an option and you're trying to stream quarterbacks, by all means, I would grab him. But I would love to say, he's going to be throwing the ball. I mean, he threw a beautiful pass to Robinson that, Allen just fucking dropped like a bomb. But
should have had it.
And Mooney too. But I'm on the fence, and I have a hard time with Bears players. Anyway, I try not to draft him just because the homer in me, it's hard.
Right.
With all that being said, God damn it, Shane's going to cut that shit the way that came out of my mouth. But I think if anything, it's going to help David Montgomery more than, Allen Robinson or Darnell Mooney. And I think there would be an uptick with Cole Kmet if trends and the way things work, security blanket with the tight end and the dump offs, the checkdowns, what have you. I could see Kmet getting a couple more targets, which should equate to more fantasy points. But I don't know if it's significant enough to where you're going to want to spend your cap or any of your funds on that. Or if you have traditional waiver claim, try to grab somebody that's out. I mean, not that the other guys are available, but Cole may be out there for some people.
Right.
What are you thinking, Steven?
I mean, it's been an interesting start for Cole Kmet so far. Only the one catch. He did have the pass interference that was just a pansy ass call. Yeah. But I'm going to bring something up. I'm loading something. I had something come to my mind here. This shows the depth of passing between Dalton and Fields. We'll bring it up here. You can just see just how more Fields stretches the field with his passes compared to Dalton, where the majority of his passes are within 10 yards downfield.
Yeah, week one was,
I mean, it's week one, it was a disaster.
There was that other graphic that I thought you might be pulling up where it was horizontal and it showed all the pass attempts and it was just red dots within 10 yards. It was just embarrassing. Like, it was, what are we doing? This is an NFL guru calling the plays here, and we're not doing anything to help,
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a two-way street. Yes, I do believe that it is helpful to this team as a whole about the fantasy prospects of what Justin Fields can do and how he opens up the game. But the wide receivers got to step up and they got to do their part too. And, you can say, you can get the ball to him. But if we continue to see drops like we saw, that's going to even cause some more concerns. We talk about these other players, these other fantasy players, and, people might say drops don't matter. Drops matter. I mean, they mattered for a second touchdown for Allen Robinson. It mattered for Darnell Mooney potentially getting a 100-yard game on Sunday, which can make a huge difference if you are relying on those guys. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, the pieces are there, and whether or not this is the timeline that the Bears had in mind to get this put together, it's for the best. And like you said, focusing on Montgomery, I definitely agree with you. I think it will open things up for Montgomery. But on the flip side of that, kind of similar to what Lamar Jackson is in Baltimore, where we could see some carries maybe siphoned away from David Montgomery, that we might see just the running back position in general, even if it's Damian Williams. Is he going to be is he going to be, a factor as well in terms of how those rushing attempts are divvied up? Because again, Fields is a mobile quarterback. He ran the ball 10 times. Yeah, they weren't all passing attempts that he was just took off with. That's the other thing. And I'm curious to see how much Matt Nagy ties that ability into the game plan on just kind of a whim basis, because we all see it when Matt Nagy gets out of the scripted 25 plays that you start a game off with. You know when that ends, because all of a sudden all hell breaks loose and you don't know what to expect. And that's what I'm most curious about in terms of where he goes and what he feels most comfortable with putting out there with Justin Fields. But again, it should be solid value across the board, definite increase by far. For I
just want to add too, with him being a rookie compared to the other rookies that played last week, that Mac Jones was pretty decent. I mean, 186 yards. I don't think he threw a touchdown, but I mean, Wilson, Lawrence, they had very tough days. I don't even think combined they hit like 12 fantasy points. But Fields, I don't know if you saw not the piece, but Dan Orlovsky put something out on Twitter regarding like a grade for Justin Fields on his 13 pass attempts, and he broke them down into pluses and minuses, real simple view of it. And he just basically said he had a really good day from a cornerback's perspective in his breakdown. It was an interesting thing. I wish we could bring it up here, but it just came to my mind, and it does give me hope, if you will, moving forward. And I know it kind of contradicts what I said earlier, but there is that foundational skill set that he has. And when it broke down into this very simple form, it gives you that sense of like, all right, so if Nagy is willing to open it up a little bit, there's the potential because of what he did with what he had. And there, it was just, it's like, shit, come on, man. Like, just, can we free Bill Lazor or let him help us out here, and give some fantasy, luck to the rest of us, as well as the Bears W's. But it's just like, sorry. I just wanted to add that as we're wrapping up this little segment.
The rant is there. The rant is understood. I think everybody is definitely looking at the possibility of Lazor and what he could mean to this offense. But then again, who knows when he'll actually get the play calling ability, and then not only that, but Matt Nagy even like taking it back, which we all know could also happen at any given time. So God knows what happens here. Antonio in the comments here.
I'm going to get to that today. That's something on my list I would like to chat about.
All right.
So I just want to let Antonio hang tight, my man.
All right. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll get things moving with our topics kicking off here. We're going to keep it in the quarterback realm and talking about two injuries that occurred on Sunday. Carson Wentz not spraining one, but both ankles. That's a feat in itself. Spraining both ankles.
Like when you're a sophomore in college and you drink too much grain alcohol and you jumped out of like a second-story window, or some bullshit like that, running from like a offensive lineman's girlfriend, or offensive lineman whose girlfriend's room you're in. Just happened to whatever. Not saying that happened to anybody on this podcast, but whatever.
Well, and I can only picture something like that happening where you remember like the runway models, and they're wearing the super high heels and their legs keep like folding in. They can't stand up straight. Like that's all I can think of is how you can do something like that. Piss poor outside of
Wentz just broke his foot walking, I think, didn't he, when the season started? I mean, the guy's it's unfortunate because he seems like he seems like a guy you want to root for. He's come from, the whole thing with North Dakota State, and just the way it all played out, you pull for him, in my opinion, anyway. But with that being said, this dude is just like, he's fantasy kryptonite, honestly.
That he is. 2 years he's only been able to play all 16 games. And meanwhile, Tua Tagovailoa goes down with an rib injury. And again, another guy that just had a lot of questions surrounding him this year. Is he the guy down in Miami? There was talks that Miami wanted Deshaun Watson, that they were pursuing him. And now you see Indy starting Jacob Eason, and you see Tua being replaced by Jacoby Brissett, who just happened to play in Indianapolis last year. The Dolphins might have looked like the most inept offense in the NFL, and that's saying a lot with Jacoby Brissett, given the fact of just how bad the Jaguars have been this year in staying in games. In terms of what is brought to the table with both Jacob Eason and Jacoby Brissett, are you hands off on all Dolphins and Colts players until they get competent quarterback play?
Short answer, with the Dolphins, I do think there is some value there. I just think they have a running game that can help any quarterback if there's some success. I think you have, Gaskin is somebody that I don't know. I'm trying to say that, out of the two, I prefer someone over the Dolphins and the Colts. There's not one Colts player that I think I would even look to start right now, unless Dallas Clark was playing or Peyton Manning came back, because there's nobody right now with Jacob Eason. And he could be great, but you need to show it first. I was big on Pascal last week. He was somebody that I had talked about, for a waiver wire pickup. And, I actually picked him up in a league, and he actually helped me get a close W, which was nice. But with that being said, now I'm leaving the Colts alone. I'd like to say, the running back for the Dolphins is, the only guy, that's pretty much it though. It's kind of, Tua isn't that good anyway. I thought they may go and get Cam as a backup option, with him being hurt. And if they're not going to go and make a play for Deshaun Watson, I thought that was something that they could look to do. He's ruled out. He's not suspended yet. So it's just kind of, I don't know what we're waiting for. And if you collect cards, you can go load up on Deshaun Watson rookie cards. They're actually dropping right now. So just saying, if he comes back, not whatever, but just, but with that being said, I'm pretty much leaving both teams alone right now. And until further notice, even if Tua comes back, I'm still a little skeptical, but you got to show me, Mr. Eason. I know you got some stats for me here. So who are you looking at?
I don't necessarily know about stats. Really, I'm curious to see if both guys are going to be back, because these two teams do play each other a week from Sunday. And if it ends up being Brissett versus Jacob Eason, God help us all. That's going to be a boring ass game. Just playing your head. And it's I can't fathom starting any Colts. And the same thing, and it sucks talking about what Jonathan Taylor can bring to the table as well. That box is going to be loaded for Jonathan Taylor, and that is going to be a tough assignment for him to get things going. It actually, if it benefits anybody, it's going to benefit Naheem Hines in the passing game, because this is going to fall back relatively quickly with the game scripts and the negative game scripts that the Colts are going to be looking at here, as long as Jacob Eason is under center, because he has shown absolutely nothing. We're gonna see Jacob Eason, we're gonna see Jacoby Brissett, we're gonna see Davis Mills all starting NFL games this week, and yet here we are, and Cam Newton is still on the street, still a free agent. It blows my mind that there are actual NFL franchises that believe that those are their best options moving forward. As for the Dolphins, kind of along the same lines, I think that box is going to get stacked. You're not going to see Gaskin really used to his full potential. Right. Really, that 2-3-headed monster, whatever you want to call it, that they have going on with Ahmed and Brown also in the backfield. There's not much there that really, to me, out of any of them, screams rushing and running back value in fantasy. The one guy that I think is going to be okay out of all of this, and we kind of saw the connection with Brissett, is Jalen Waddle. He had a relatively decent game with what he brought to the table. I believe it was 4 catches, 66 yards, somewhere in that vicinity. And, if he can continue to do that and break away, I mean, he's got all the talents in the world. He's got the speed. It's just a matter of, can Brissett get him the ball on a relative basis? And, we'll see if Will Fuller's back this week. That might obviously change things up in terms of how the Dolphins look at it. But it is a very, very narrow window across both teams for what I would consider playable fantasy options, which sucks because I feel like injuries are decimating things left and right this year like never before. And
it's pretty wild.
It's eating away at me.
Last year with all the injuries, like, no preseason, guys are getting injured. It's just, football is fucking violent, man. And these dudes are big, strong, athletic as hell. And, Andy Dalton hurt himself trying to stop, so that speaks to his athleticism. I'm just kidding. But you look at the list of injuries, and it's just kind of like it's really staggering. I'm like scrolling on my computer and it's just like Jarvis Landry. You had Tua, obviously. Dalvin Cook got banged up.
Yep.
Deontay Johnson, who I love him. I think he's
why he was even in the game.
But Russell Gage, obviously, Amari Cooper's a guy, that I think we might talk about him a little later, but he's somebody that got to keep those ribs that he got popped, and it's like, if he's out, that hurts
a lot.
And
yeah.
Alec got hurt at the same time. So it's like, but Darrell Henderson and
twist the knife, just
the
twist
Niners.
the knife.
I mean, what the hell? I mean, they don't have a running back left. I think, they were looking, my buddy in high school called me and they said they were looking to get him to try out just because they needed somebody. It was like, there's guys, Lamar Miller got to try out today. Like they need guys, I think Kerryon Johnson got signed from the practice squad. Maybe there was somebody they signed and I could be mispronouncing his first name, but, running back by committee for sure out in San Francisco because they're decimated. Injuries are just killing teams, and Big Ben, I think he hurt his elbow bopping the baloney, but whatever. But he got hurt too. I think he said it's a pec injury, but at the end of the day, how that goes. Hip bone's connected to the foot bone, the whole nine. So it's all working one way or another.
We'll just go through the full anatomy here to get rolling. So last thing here before we get into our topics, the biggest surprise of the first 2 weeks thus far.
Okay.
You want to go first or you want me to go first?
You know what? I want to see who you go, what your thoughts are here before I sound off.
Okay.
If that's okay with you.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. There is there's a guy that I wasn't necessarily keen on that has surprised the hell out of me. And I am not seeing a situation in which he slows down, especially with the schedule that he has coming up. And for whatever reason, he's still available in leagues out there. It's a slimmer margin that it's only like 20%. So, but it's still out there. So in shallower 8-team leagues, I still think he's a solid pickup, and that's Sterling Shepard with the Giants.
Yeah.
A lot of people overlooked Shepard just with everything else that the Giants had going on. They bring in Kenny Galladay. They've got Darius Slayton. If you're Evan Ingram truther, God help you, but there are those people out there.
Yes, there's some out there.
Sterling Shepard is currently wide receiver 9 through the first 2 weeks. He's got 207 yards on 16 catches and a score against two of the better defenses in the NFL, two of the better secondaries in the Broncos and Washington. You look at it now, they got the Falcons, the Cowboys, the Panthers, and the Raiders in 4 of their next 6. Kenny Galladay, obviously missing time in the preseason, helped out with that. But it seems like Shepard and Daniel Jones have that connection, and it's not slowing down with the amount of targets that seem to be getting peppered towards Shepard. And again, being a wide receiver 1 right now is something I was not expecting. But the more I look at how he's playing and how he's performing, I think he's going to keep it up. Yeah. I really think he's going to keep it up.
That's a really good pick, actually, Stephen. I like that. You did some digging there, and I think he's a dude that, hey, take a bow, kind sir. That was beautiful. I see that lasting as well. I'm happy I'm just, if you pulled that off in the draft, or if you were able to snag him early on off the waiver wire, or not even, and he was just sitting there on a Thursday when you were taking a dump and you were able to pick him up, like you're winning games, I think, with that move. I don't think you can go wrong if you can pick up Shepard, like you said. What was the number on Ron? I think I had it somewhere 53% rostered. Is that accurate?
Here, let's pull up the old Espen machine and get it pulled up here. Let's see here. Add players. We'll just go this way. Sterling Shepard, where's he at? He's on a waiver in this league I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, in our division, he's on there too, and I think he's projected for like almost 16 points or something. Like,
67.2% rostership on ESPN. So again, he's out there in a healthy amount, more than I thought he was.
Yeah.
And I mean, he played a Thursday night game, so that obviously helps with getting a little bit more of a warning on what he can do, but he's got a nice schedule coming up, and he's definitely somebody that you want to pick up there.
Yeah, man. I couldn't disagree with that if you asked me to, because I just think you hit the nail right on the head there, man. And I'm going to kind of have a layup for you with respects to mine, because I think, actually, I don't know. Now that I say that, I'm going to go with Derek Carr, a gentleman who is leading the league in passing. I think it's 816 passing yards.
Killing it.
I'm sorry, 817 passing yards. But also he's thrown the ball 93 times in 2 games. So he's slinging it, and I think there's a reason that every Las Vegas wide receiver is available right now, and your waiver wire, there aren't many owned. Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards, even Hunter Renfrow, I think, is available too. So it's like there's a reason for it, because he is dominating right now. Granted, surprised by their victories, 2-0. They've done this before, right? Don't they go like 5-1, 6-0, and then they just shit the bed the rest of the way? But even from that perspective, David Carr wasn't this accurate and this successful. I mean, this past week, 27 for 38, 382 yards, two tutters, and him and Waller. If you could stack those two, if you had Waller and you could pick up Carr, who's available, he's only rostered in like 20% of the leagues, and I think that's wild to think of that. It's almost like the whole Jameis Winston conundrum a couple of years ago when he was leading the league, and he was available, in passing, because he had all those interceptions. But David Carr doesn't have that. Granted, we're 2 games in, and there's this overreaction week 2 take or whatever, week 3, but I would love to see Derek. I see Derek Carr having this longevity, for throughout the season. I think he's a guy that if you could get him as your backup, and who knows, injury, just matchup wise, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but with all that being said, I think he's a guy, regardless of who you're putting in front of him, if they're down, they're going to have to throw. And he's not afraid to, obviously almost 100 throws in 2 games. And Josh Jacobs is banged up with the whole, and Kenyon Drake was just awful this past week. So it's like David, or, Mr. Carr, Derek, sorry, not David. David's, bruised up still from this.
David's still getting sacked.
Yeah, exactly. But Derek, it's like, hey, bring us to the promised land. Let's see what you could do. And it looked like he was hurt. He came back, and it's like, he's a guy. And I think fantasy wise, he's a dude that's going to help you somewhere along the season. But I just see him having this season of dominance, and I think that just helps out on the fantasy side.
Yeah, I'm a Derek Carr truther. I don't believe he gets the credit that he deserves. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. It's great to see him, put it all together. And not only that, but the game on Monday night against the Ravens was a classic. I think just getting that spark for him, and then to come back go into Pittsburgh and do what he did against the Steelers defense that is good. And yeah, you can argue TJ Watt got injured, and that obviously makes things easier, obviously, but he still got it done, and he still looks like he's fitting the part, and he's getting the ball spread around. Yeah, he focused in on Waller a lot week 1, but he finally figured out how to get the ball to Henry Ruggs. It was about damn time, because Henry Ruggs can get open, and he can get open quick downfield. And so it was just great to see how he's started things off here. I still feel like they need another wide receiver just to open it up a little bit more, like just a solid weapon. I don't think they're going to get it, but we'll see what happens. Maybe
you never know. Trades
year,
are much more I don't want to say much more common, but they happen a little bit more frequently than they did in the past. You never know.
That's true. That is true.
Hey, shit, maybe OBJ gets traded, or Allen Robinson gets traded. Who knows? But I'm just saying.
So send the whole Windy City into turmoil there with that comment. Why don't?
Let me ask you. Look below, Edwin. I know, right? No one's going to take what I say seriously, but regarding the Bears, fantasy wise, hey, I've been right on a couple so far. But below, Edwin, Mr. Lopez down below here. Would you start Shepard over Ridley?
No, Calvin Ridley is Calvin Ridley. I'm not that comfortable.
That's tough,
with Sterling Shepard yet. Yeah, he's got a decent matchup this week, but that's a no. Calvin Ridley is going to be a wide receiver 1 for your team. That's all it boils down to. And it seems like he's starting to get things figured out. And honestly, Kyle
play
Pitts,
each other actually.
Yeah, and honestly, Kyle Pitts starting to figure things out is only going to help Ridley get more looks and get more open looks.
Right now,
having fun with that.
I'm trying. It's
it's a struggle, isn't it? I love
draft picks, man, and I'm just like, yeah, that's great. I love young, good players, so let's try to make a deal. So, I actually ignored his text earlier before we jumped on, so I'm gonna have to hit him up later. It'd be nice to pull that off.
Let it break. Let it break.
Do you like to trade, Stephen, in fantasy?
I do. I don't trade as often as I wish I did. More in Dynasty than redraft. I've come to learn that finding and executing trades that make league mates angry is a lot easier to do in redraft. And I just don't like to create that drama, so I kind of just roll with what I got.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's the right thing to do, that's up for debate.
If you're a good drafter, you don't need to make trades, right? Like in theory, unless you're decimated by injuries,
Yeah, I like to think that way, but it's hard. To I don't know, like it feels kind of like egotistical to say, I don't need to trade. And it's like there's instances where anyone needs to, regardless of how good you think you may be. And we're actually going to talk about maybe some of those blunders that we have made right now. Is the panic meter that we have put into play here. As we all know, there's been some players this year that have not gotten off on the right foot. And we're going to serve some players up left and right in terms of how much panic we're really feeling about said players and whether or not they can turn things around in week 3 and beyond. I'm going to serve one up to you to start here. It's going to be a nice little layup, but you might have some different thoughts on it. We'll see. Going to the 49ers. Wide receiver, Brandon Ayuk.
Panic all the way, man. Panic.
10 out of 10?
Yes, I think he's in the doghouse for one. I think the whole thing with him and Trey Sermon for week 1, there's not much to it came out, but there was some rumors that he got into some shit with they missed curfew or something. I'm just saying, like there had to be something why he didn't play the way he, in week 1 and the snaps he had, didn't play until the second half. Anyway, let's see, he's run the 3rd most routes for the Niners this year. That's the only thing that he's done. outside of that, he's been thrown under the bus by his coach. He's only been targeted twice this season. And I hate to say it, but Debo Samuel is just lighting it up right now. And so I don't think you can count on him to do much this year. I just think he is panic. And if they're going to go with Trey Lance at some point, I think that even hurts his chances even more. I just think it's not looking good for the sophomore. I had high hopes for him. A couple of my buddies are pissed because what the fuck, what's going on? I'm like, dude, who knows, man? It's something is not. It's just and then the proof's in the pudding. It's just not looking good, man. And there's no numbers to support otherwise. There's no targets. There's no real receptions, there's no stats, and there's no hope on your roster, man. In my opinion. What do you think about Brandon?
It does remind me a lot of Dante Pettis. Remember Dante Pettis a couple of years ago? Everybody was super high on him after his 1 year, and then he just disappeared into nothing. And this just reeks of that situation, despite the fact that there's that draft capital sitting behind Ayuk. There's some very odd comments that came from Shanahan as well, saying that he needed to learn to be a professional. It's like, okay, well, like you mentioned, whether it was curfew or something else, there's something else to that story that we're just not getting.
Yep.
But it's bizarre. It's really bizarre. And I've already seen people give up on him that have already dropped him and said, I'm going to wash my hands of this situation. I'm not going to miss out on the waiver wire gold that might be sitting there at the beginning of the season. Yep. And in all honesty, I can't blame him. And it sucks to have to drop, a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick, no matter where you did select him. But that's just the name of the game. And especially when you're drafting somebody there that you consider a starter for your team, you got to fix that quick, especially if you're off to a slow start as a whole and things just haven't gone the way you expected them to. I'm right there with you as a 10. I think that's he's definitely at the tip top of the panic meter mountain for how these first 2 weeks have gone.
It's good to see we agree on that one. That was and I think we probably share a similar sentiment with this workhorse of a running back down in Atlanta. I'm curious on your thoughts regarding Mike Davis. The familiar face has kind of stepped up and is doing some things over there. But what do you think about Mike Davis, RB1 to start? And speaking of that draft status and where you took him, he was a guy that people might have overreached for because of the way your draft has fallen out, because of just the number of important running backs, and just you're like, oh, I need a guy, grab Davis, and now you're like, shit. Now you're looking at something, in my opinion, not too good. But what are your thoughts on Davis?
Davis, I'm not overly worried yet.
Okay.
Yet being the key word there, I'll call it a 6 out of 10. So I'm still on the higher end of the scale. Okay. The situation is the fact that they were going to face a negative game script last week, regardless of what they were facing off against with the Buccaneers. I'm not necessarily worried about Cordero Patterson as a runner. I think he averaged like 1 yard on his rushing attempts.
But he takes snaps away, though. You know what I mean?
He does. He does. I just think if you get into more of a traditional game script, which the flip side of this, Atlanta just isn't going to get into very often, is where you're going to run into more of what Mike Davis is good at doing. He's never been really known as a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield and do the things that Patterson is doing now. He's more of that hard-nosed downhill runner that can take defenders with him. And I'm just trying to put into perspective, just like, okay, can I see this happening on a consistent basis? No. As far as, like I said, I'm at a 6 out of 10 here. Yep. I'm keeping him as like a running back 4, and really a bye week filler is all I really view him as now, because confidence wise, I don't think you can go beyond that. And it sucks saying it, but that's just how it is right now.
Yeah. I think you're being nice too, honestly.
I'm being nice. Where are you at?
He's a dude that I'm looking to throw in a trade and trying to get somebody else. Like I don't have faith. I think it's going to be more the Kyle Pitts show, Calvin Ridley, and the gadget Cordell, Patterson with some Mike Davis. But I just don't. I've never been a big Mike Davis fan. I was surprised by last year. Anyway, with that being said, that was your choice. You're 6 out of 10. So I'm more like 8 out of 10.
Okay. I mean, that's
yeah.
So there's that slim glimmer that you have.
I would like to see it. One of my buddies has him. It'd be nice if he could get some help and make some plays. But with that, I'm not in that league, so I'm like, hey, I hope it works for you, dude. But like,
hey, healthy running backs are hard to come by these days, regardless.
True.
Even if it has been a little difficult to roll with. Let's see here. Let's stick with running back.
Okay.
And what we got here? Should I get Madison off waivers or hope nobody takes him? God, Alexander Madison has been one of those guys where like I have a love-hate relationship with him. I don't think it's at a point yet where you need to grab him.
Yeah, they said in Cook saying, it's an ankle issue. He seems fine. I mean, I think you'd be okay waiting. Don't waste any money. I mean, you want to throw a buck out there just in case, but then you're wasting away. But with that being said, I'd just wake up in the morning and sign him. Yeah. I think he's going to be there personally.
Yeah. I mean, somebody might panic. There's always the panic.
Yeah.
I mean, having Cook, maybe in terms of a handcuff, but depending
6
on
out of 12, I mean, you could end up being number one next week.
I hate rolling waivers so much.
Yeah.
Blind bidding is the best, folks. Do it for your leagues. If you don't, do it. Stick with running back here. We'll go to the New York Giants. Saquon Barkley off to a bit of a slow start. Do you consider that more of just easing him back into action, or is there cause for concern here for a top draft pick in fantasy drafts this year?
A little from column A and a little from column B. I think, I think more, it's not the physicality, it's the the mental side of things with him. It's like he had that run yet on Sunday where it was like, oh shit, that's vintage, Saquon. Do I think he's going to be pre-ACL tear dominating? It's going to be tough to replicate that. I just think, the ring rust, so to speak, as well as just him getting over that mental hurdle of having that grind. I still think he's a dude that you can count on. I don't see him being worth that top 8 pick that you might have, wasted on him, Logan Frost. But with that being said, I think you could sit him or even try to, you could play him as a flex if you're strong in the running back department, if you can afford to, but you're going to run him out there because eventually he's going to break. I think he's not break in a good way, not in a bad way.
Right.
I think he's a guy, I'm not panicking yet. He's a guy I'm trying to buy right now. Personally, I think he's a dude that you could try to make a trade for because of, like I just said, teams that are desperate because they're hurting because he isn't producing, and from that perspective, I'm not panicking at this point. I didn't draft him at all. But at that, with that being said, I'm at like a 2 out of 10, if that, maybe a 1.5. That just to, say God, maybe he doesn't get over it. But, with that being said, I still think he's going to turn it around and you'll be happy with, with his fantasy output. It may not be Dalvin Cook, may not be Kamara, it may not be CMC, but it's going to be,
right.
You won't be disappointed.
Right, exactly. I'm like a 3.5.
Ooh,
I'm a little bit higher on worrying about him. I will say that it looks like they are ramping him up and that things should come to a head against Atlanta, which is not that great of a defense. He played 48% of the snaps in week 1, up to 84% in week 2. The one thing that does concern me, and the thing that a lot of people did draft him for, especially in the half point and full point PPR leagues, is the receiving work that he was getting early on in his career, and he just hasn't been there so far. He's gotten 3 targets in each game. Game 1 had 1 catch for 1 yard, and week 2 he had 2 catches for 12 yards on those 3 targets. So not a whole lot moving there. And if that work is not going to materialize for him, the next question becomes, okay, what is his actual value in this running game? And knowing that the Giants have the weapons that they didn't necessarily have in Saquon's rookie season, which is why he was getting so much work out of the backfield and getting so involved in the passing game, are those days behind him? Is that something that, again, Garrett, like Carr's is saying here in the chat, as his OC, stay away. That could be part of it, because even during Garrett's time in Dallas with Elliott, we really didn't see Elliott get too involved in the passing game. And so the question becomes, where is that usage going to be? Where's that ceiling? Because we haven't seen the ceiling yet. It's just a matter of, are we going to see it next week? Are we going to see it 2 weeks from now? Or are they going to slow play this? But if he's already at 84%, I'd say we're going to see it sooner rather than later. But
true. It's a short week, though, Stephen. They definitely coming on a short week. They're playing on a short week against the Falcons. So there is a chance, where he may benefit from playing the Falcons. But with all that being said, there is cause for concern. Like you said, I just think, man, there was signs it's there. It's like, if he can just remember that and it going from 48% to 84, that's tremendous, and that shows that the Giants are seeing that too. But I just, I hear what you're saying, and you could be right. So with that being said, maybe we share a difference of an opinion on this one. And that's okay, right? We can.
That's all right. That's exactly what we need to fight more.
Oh, fuck you, man.
Last panic meter one. I told you I was going to bug you about this guy. I know we were both high on him, and I think we're kind of sharing the same sentiment here. Going back to San Francisco, and the only Trey Sermon, who looks like he is headed for the worst draft pick of 2021.
DOA. Oh my goodness.
My God. I don't know what he's done to Kyle Shanahan, but it ain't pretty. Where are you at on one Trey Sermon?
I mean, you and I, man, we loved us some Trey Sermon, right? Like, there was a lot of
positive. So did Matt Waldman. Matt Waldman was here preaching the choir on Trey Sermon.
And I sold that bill of goods to everybody that I knew. I'm like, dude, Trey is going to be, and what the hell happened week 1, man? Like, he just didn't even play, and then his first carry week 2, concussion, fumble, then concussion, or concussion fumble, who knows, and now it's just, oh boy, it's not looking
Elijah
good.
Mitchell.
So I'll put it to you like this, right? Like, in my opinion, if they had faith in him after the injuries with Elijah Mitchell, and and he came back and he finished out, the game, but with McCasey being hurt, you're like, all right, well, if he has a concussion, he'll get through the protocol. We're looking at week 3. That it's like, no, we're going to bring in somebody off the practice squad. We're now looking at Lamar Miller. We're looking at, I'm waiting for Adrian Peterson to get the call, and all day shows up. But I am like blown away. I don't think Trey Sermon is gonna do anything this year now, based on what we're saying. Or Shanahan is the ultimate poker player, and he is just stashing him, saving him, and is going to unleash him on the league. But I don't think he has that in him, because they got to win games. And I think you'd rather go with your workhorse than bring in Lamar Miller or, Kerryon Johnson or whoever, So I am panicked to high hell with this.
You're like 11 out of 10.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. I'm so disappointed. Like, I don't even want, it's that like guy you drafted that you can't drop, because you're just like, if I drop him, it just hurts, because someone else is going to pick him up, and then you're just going to feel like shit that you dropped him. Could be a game where he actually does well. You're like, see, I fucking knew it, man. He was good. And then it's like, all right, well, but that's my take there.
Yeah, it's hard to just watch it all unfold and just realize the draft capital that was spent fantasy wise, not necessarily. I mean, he was a day 3 draft pick in the NFL draft, and again, they can be very hit or miss with what they do bring to the table.
Damn, Logan.
I don't know if we said carry you to the championship.
Those were, there's receipts. We can always go back and play. Yeah, but we were both pretty high on this.
I would say I was looking at him as a flex play pretty damn early.
Yeah.
To what he could do. So yeah, I'll eat my crow gladly this early, and I don't like doing that early.
But it's crazy to do it after week 2.
This is an exception. Yeah. This is an exception to the rule, just based on what has happened in San Francisco. I mean, Elijah Mitchell, of all people, is not the guy that I anticipated, because nothing on the tape suggested that Elijah Mitchell was going to be an NFL starter, let alone a guy that's going to be a workhorse for an NFL team at the beginning of his rookie season. But hey,
did you pick him up at all?
I didn't because I was scared to death of what Kyle Shanahan was going to do. I'm afraid of him. I'm afraid of him. I don't know what's going to happen. I can't trust anything that offense does right now, and it drives me nuts saying that, because I feel like they do have some decent offensive output available there. It's just I'm not going to throw that into my lineup. That's another team. Throw them in with the Colts and throw them in with the Dolphins, not injury related, that I'm just not going to touch.
Yeah.
That I'm just, worried about it. It's just, oh man, it's like it's frustrating. Like even George Kittle.
Logan added a little juice to, put a little meat on potato, on the bone on this one.
Matt. Oh yeah, Matt said it. Okay, we'll put it.
Thanks, Logan.
We'll put it on Walton for the one saying it.
I have a question. Actually, we're going to get to Mr. Robinson in a little bit, but I think he's a guy that he could be discussed as a dude to panic about, but I think it's situations or situational, if you will, and it's like but anyway, I just think he's, but I saw that in the chat. I think he's a dude that, I think things could turn around for him. That's what I'll say here. But I think he's also a dude to look for in week 3, but we'll get to that later on. But I digress.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that as well. And we'll touch base on him. Before we get to the glitches and cheat codes, we got to do some speed runs. Now, we talked about the guys that were getting off to a bit of a slow start that we might be getting worried about, but now it's time to turn our attention to the guys that are getting off to the hot starts and whether or not they can keep it up. And we'll talk a little fantasy fraud or fortune. Do you got some gold sitting on your roster that's going to lead the way to a fantasy championship in 2021? Through the first 2 weeks. And so we've got lists we'll throw back and forth. It's a nice, simple, are they a fraud or are they a fantasy fortune? Jackal, I'll throw these at you first. I got 5
Go right ahead, kind sir.
Set up here. And we're going to start things off in Minnesota with a wide receiver that has gotten off to a start that I don't think a lot of people anticipated. And it is the one, the only KJ Osborne.
How are we playing this out? You think you want me to, this is a new way of looking at it.
Fraud or fortune?
I know you. I saw him. Everyone was signing him up. I think he's a guy. Fraud. Sorry.
Fraud?
I just think with the weapons there, I think it's more of he was an opportunistic receiver. I just think it was something where you have your Thielen, you have Jefferson, and that's great. You have Osborne. I just think it's something that I stayed away. I just think it's more of a fraud than Not, to be honest with you. I don't see it. It's caught me by surprise. I'm not a big Kirk Cousins fan either, so it's hard. It's tough for me to see. But what do you think about Osborne?
Yeah, I think it was a full blown gunfight that occurred with the Cardinals game. I'm in the camp of believing that it ain't gonna last unless Thielen comes down with an injury, which he have happened to him. We'll see if that does occur. But I'd agree with you there on fraud. Next guy, Rondale Moore, wide receiver with the Arizona Cardinals. Had a couple people asking about him a little bit earlier in the chat.
Big fan. I love Rondale. I think he's a guy who, he's not getting as many snaps as AJ Green or Christian Kirk, but Mr. Cliffy over there out in Arizona, he's using the boy. He's 7 for 7 on targets versus receptions, which is beautiful. Obviously, 114 yards and a touchdown in week 2. I think he's a dude that is not rostered in every league, which is surprising. I have him on a few of my teams who I drafted, just because we've talked about him, and I just think he's a guy that, you really like. But, I see him, just that trend is moving in the right direction. That offense is potent. And the more they use him, the more that this team just starts playing, I think they're going to find more uses for him. And you're just going to see him getting more and more targets. He could be a guy that gets double-digit targets week in and week out just because he needs the ball in his hands. And that offense with Kyler Murray it's going to be awesome. I'm a big fan of pretty much anybody, with Arizona, even except James Conner, but he's a guy that you can handcuff with Edmonds, but whatever.
Yeah.
say
the least. I honestly, if he's still on your waiver wire, you need to go pick him up this week. Plain and simple. Looks like Cliff Kingsbury is using him as the new Larry Fitzgerald, and just what he's able to do in getting him the possessions, getting him into open space, and using him to what his strengths are. And it's nice to see a coach actually know his players' strengths and use them.
What's that mean?
Sorry. Got a little excited there. So I agree with you. I think he's going to be unfortunate. You better go grab him before it's too late. Quarterback, New York Giants quarterback Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I'm not very high on Mr. Jones. He's a guy I think is a streaming option at quarterback for fantasy. That's more of matchups for me. I just don't, because I don't see him doing it every week. He's a guy that looked great last week. He didn't turn the ball over as much as he typically does, right? But he had the numbers. So I think he threw for like 300 and I was looking for it while we were talking. No, he had 250 yards, but he was 22 for 32 and a touchdown. And he rushed for like 95 yards, almost 100 yards in a touchdown. So, over 300 yards of total offense. I don't expect him to run that much. I just don't see him. I look at that more as a fraud, as not. I don't know. I'm not a big Daniel Jones guy. He's like in that Mitch Trubisky camp where, I think the Giants faithful is sick of Daniel Jones to some extent. I think they rather have gone with Justin Fields or somebody else. Maybe not. The Giants fans I know here in New England. But, with that being said, I look at Daniel Jones as more of a fraud.
Yeah, it's I give him credit. He did everything he needed to do to win the game Thursday night against Washington, and it didn't happen because of just bad endings and line play and the penalty, and just, oh God, that was painful. That was a painful game for Giants fans. And for all of that, the fact he just hasn't been able to hold on to the ball and he continues to turn the ball over, that's been the biggest thing. And it makes you just question, can he just continue to string things together? I'm on the fence. I do lean fraud a little bit. I want to see him turn things around. But really that ability to run with the ball can go a long way, even if he is prone to, a turnover or two per game. If they can get things moving in the right direction, if he can continue to grow here in this, I believe, third season. So we'll see what he can do. But I'm on the fraud side slightly with him there. Tight end, an oldie but a goodie. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Rob Gronkowski off to a heated start. Tight end 2 through 2 weeks, only behind Travis Kelce. Is he gonna keep it up?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Gronk, and just letting Bob know, Bob, we did talk about this. The first thing we talked about was the impact that Justin Fields is going to have on the option, fantasy players for the Bears. Just to let you know, bud.
Yeah. So rewind to the beginning of the episode.
Yes,
we got it all there.
Yes, sir. But I'm a big fan of Gronk. I think, the year off did him some good, healthier, figure some things out. He looks great. I mean, he's on every fucking commercial on TV, and it's like, Jesus, dude. I mean, he's got a great agent, but with that being said, him and Brady are doing what they do best. I think he's a guy that's going to put it up all year long. I think Bruce Arians gets it. He knows. I mean, he's a genius, and I think he's a coach that is going to go with what works. And Brady to Gronk is, that's the old tried and true. And there's a reason they've done it 100 times, so,
right.
And it's like, I was surprised as I dropped him right before the start of week 1 in one of my leagues. And I've been getting my balls busted ever since. But, with that being said, you're right, man. I think Gronk's in for a good year, a solid year. He likes to block and use. I saw an interview with him, yesterday. He was with the Manning brothers talking about it, and he looks like he's motivated, but he's also looked like he's having fun. He always does, but I just think he's healthy, and he's a guy that's going to put in a solid 17-game season.
Yeah, it was funny seeing him admit he doesn't watch tape and just asked Tom Brady who's covering him. I just
outrun people. Yeah.
I mean, it works for him. It's worked for him his entire career. He's putting together a Hall of Fame career, and it's surprising to see it. I just worry about the fact that the schedule's been kind to him to start things off here, and here we are with the Rams as the next opponent here. That's a much tougher defense than what you'll see against Dallas or Atlanta, which are layups, plain and simple, to what can be brought to the table and stopping Gronk and trying to stop that offense. I mean, I think he's going to offer mid tight end 1 value. I don't think he's going to finish top 3 by any means. I think that is still going to belong to Kelce and Waller and Hockenson. I think that's going to be your top 3 tight ends by the time everything's said and done. But I think they'll give you some 5 to 7 range, which is more than acceptable. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, he's a starter. He wasn't being drafted as a starter per se. So, yeah, I'd call it a fortune. Okay. I think we call it a fortune there. Yeah. Last one, after a surprising week, the Dallas Cowboys running back, Tony Pollard, a 100-yard game on 13 carries against the LA Chargers.
Man, I was, that, like you said, surprised, right? I mean, the amount of carries he had compared to Zeke. Zeke had a good day. I mean, I wasn't completely shocked. I mean, I think Zeke did he have 100 yards? I mean, 13 for 109 and a touchdown for Pollard, right? And I'm just looking for Zeke here, but Zeke had a decent day. So it wasn't like it was all that, how do I say this? Like it was once it started happening and you saw Pollard running, you're like, shit, I see it just based on the eyes. Pollard is running harder. He's hitting the hole. He's definitely looking like the back you want to go with. And they did, and I just think that speaks to Sherman looking for the hot hand there. Not necessarily I'm looking to change my game plan and Pollard's going to, take over the Zeke role. But it's something to keep an eye on. It's definitely, there's clear value there. He also had 3 targets. He caught all 3 of them, for 31 yards. So he almost had, 140 yards on the day. But what was that saying? So 72 to 33% based on the percentages of usage, right? So Zeke was out there a little, three quarters to one quarter basically. But Pollard did the most with what he had, and I think it came at the right moments, and Sherman went with that. I don't know if I'm going to go out on I don't know if it's a fortune for me. I look at more as a fraud. I look at more as just somebody that is, it was the opportunity presented itself. He'll have his moments, but I don't know what type of who you're going to play him over, in my opinion. Like if you're that hurt and you're playing Tony Pollard in a bye, that's one thing. Or if it's a bye, that's one thing. But if it's like you're that decimated by injuries and he's your RB 1 or 2, I think you're kind of, you should be looking to make a trade or just look forward to next year,
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see how Dallas does balance this moving forward. Because like you mentioned, Tony Pollard looked like the better runner on Sunday. So you cannot ignore that by any means. And whether or not that's going to turn into a situation in which, we might see more of a committee approach between the two, a plateau. I don't think it necessarily will get to that, barring any type of injury or catastrophic collapse by Zeke. But I think a 66-33 split isn't out of the question once things get rolling here. And again, if Pollard can show that it was no fluke for what happened on Sunday, that could turn into a pretty decent bench piece. Again, just from what the running back position has been and the injuries that have worked here. It's man, I tell you what, I'm leaning fortune. I'm on the fence again here with another guy. I want to see what Dallas does, because I don't believe they're going to ignore what happened in LA and just how well Tony Pollard ran, and really just how good Tony Pollard has been in previous seasons as well, running for Zeke and being there for him. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We'll go with it here. Let's see what we got here. We're over an hour already. Let's how
about this? Let me give you two.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you, because there's one guy on here, I think it's actually I want to ask you about Mike Williams for the Chargers. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the contract year, Mr. Williams.
Fortune, 100% fortune.
Okay.
I think he's going to be fantastic when it comes to the rest of the season here. He's finally got everything clicking. He seems to have that ability to connect with Justin Herbert. I think he's in for a career season, and not necessarily thinking he'll repeat it in the future if he stays with the Chargers. Yes. If he goes somewhere else, I'm not as convinced.
Okay. I like that. I think he's a guy who, I look at him as fortune all day long. He's trying to get that bread, but I think you're right. I think he wants to stay in LA. He's a guy that I think just wants to be, I don't say respect. He wants to be, I think he'd like to stay and retire. He's a guy that's just, he's a Charger. He's a dude that I just think he's rocking that lightning bolt, and he's a dude that but I think this is his year. He's trying to earn that money, but he's doing it week in and week out. As long as he stays healthy, he's a guy I've had in my rosters in the past. You've had him too, I'm sure. And he's like, something always happens, but I think he's definitely a fortune this year. I'm going to circle back to Derek Carr, because I'm curious to know your thoughts. I know I really like Carr this year, but what are your thoughts?
I think, man, I want to say fortune. I really do, because I think he can finally get it. He can put it all together. But at the same time, I don't know if the supporting cast around him, especially since it hasn't been able to stay healthy. I mean, we saw Josh Jacobs out this week. So, I mean, right then and there, you're dealing with concerns of the running game getting going and having those weapons ready and available. I don't think he's going to keep up the pace that he started out as. I still think he's a very reliable QB2. So I hate saying it, but I got to say fraud in terms of keeping up the pace.
Wow.
Even though I love him, even though I love him, I can't put all my eggs in the basket.
All right. And last one, I'm going to sneak this one in here.
Okay.
Wide receiver, Deebo Samuel, Niners. I mean,
there's something about him. I I cannot like. I don't know what it is. And I hate saying it because what he does with the ball and the amount of work that he needs to do to stay fantasy relevant, it blows my mind that he's able to do it with such consistency.
Killed me last
I'm
year,
going to say
so
Fortune. I'm saying Fortune, even though I have everything against me, killing me, saying don't do it. I'm doing it. I think he's the passing attack threat with the Niners. It's not Ayuk. I wish it was Ayuk, but Debo seems to have that locked down as long as he can stay healthy.
Yeah, I he's caught 75% of his balls. I think he's 15 for 20, almost 300 yards catch. I mean, but to your point earlier, it's like you want to stay away from the Niners. It's like you don't. It's fantasy relevancy versus fantasy optimism, right? It's like you want that to happen. So it's like you want to take those dudes, but it's like, should you? It's like no, fucking don't. Stay away. It's like, and so you got to think about. It's tough, So hopefully you do hear some of the shit that comes out of our mouths, and there's some, some prognostication that sounds like we know what we're talking about, because there's some stuff we may know a little bit about. I wouldn't say a lot, but shit, that'll probably be cut and recorded and played again. But I just, I could see. I just like I like Debo. I just don't see it happening all year. So I'm with you on that on a fraud.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
we got start sick.
Yeah, we got one more segment. We call it glitches and cheat codes.
Yeah.
We'll toss a couple starts, couple sits your way. Instead of calling it start sit, we call it glitches and cheat codes. Glitches, obviously, being the sits, cheat codes being the starts to get you through week 3 and get rolling. I'll let you start things off. What do you got for one of your starts for?
All right, I'm going to start actually quarterback starting. Starts. I'm starting actually. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it's just based on matchups, and it's going to go against fraud and fortune. But I would start Daniel Jones.
Wow, look at this
against the Falcons over Tom Brady.
Oh,
yep.
Against
I'm sitting
Rams.
Brady. I just I'm.
That's what you get for living in Connecticut.
That's right. But I mean, in reality, Brady's playing against the Rams, and there's been so much great. It's like, all right, it can't just be all great. It's like, come on, this is the game, right? Like, I think it speaks to like sitting Mike Evans. Like, he's a guy I wouldn't look to start this week if you have somebody you could start instead of him. I mean, I think the Rams are that solid of defense as opposed to like, Brady. I just think they're going to cause some problems. And I think the Rams or the Bucks are going to have to do something a little different than Brady throwing all over the field. And I could, this could be a freezing cold take, but at the same time, speaking to the stuff with Daniel Jones, he's a guy who has a very favorable matchup. And I think him and Sterling Shepard could have a monster day. I think it's, again, like I said, we were talking about Jones before. It's all situational, and it's a matchup based. I would never play him all year round, but if you needed to stream somebody, I just think this is like if you had your quarterback, you had Tua for some odd reason, and then you had Wentz as your 2 quarterbacks, and you needed somebody.
you just have some bad luck,
or just you don't like the matchup for who you have, and
right.
You're like, shit, I do have Daniel Jones here. I think he's a guy that could actually get you some fantasy points for next week. That's it though, and I don't want to go, because I definitely
week 4, no, week 3, okay,
but week 3, I think he'd be okay against the Falcons. I really do. But and so that'd be my start and sit just at the quarterback spot. I kind of like to, or I apologize, glitches and cheat codes, but I look at starting, but I look at starting Daniel Jones, and I would sit Brady. So
all right. I am going to roll with the running back position for the setups here. We're gonna start Tyson Williams with the Baltimore Ravens. I think this is the week he finally gets going, as they are playing against the Detroit Lions, who let all hell break loose against the Green Bay Packers last night, unfortunately. And I am going to start him over a name that people are going to call me crazy here, maybe, but I know there's some people getting frustrated with him. Antonio Gibson, the Washington football team, Antonio Gibson against the Buffalo Bills. Looking at Tyson again, nothing cures a running back like going up against a defense that just allowed an opposing running back to compile over 100 yards from scrimmage and 4 touchdowns. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 touchdowns on the ground and through the air. The Ravens got to let Williams run. He's averaging 6.5 yards a carry. They got to let the dude run. He is looking better than Devontae Freeman, who is just this ageless wonder that they picked up off the street. He looks better than Latavius Murray. Yes, they're different types of runners,
True.
But Tyson Williams is the Ravens' best runner right now, and he's going up against a very dismal Lions rushing defense. On the flip side of that, with Antonio Gibson, everyone is getting so frustrated with him after it seemed as though he was going to get all this passing down work, but here's J.D. McKissick not leaving the room.
Zone. He got the red zone carry. I was watching that. I'm like, what the What, are you kidding me? I couldn't imagine having him on your team and just losing your mind seeing that. Like, what are we doing here? I get the passing, but
right. It's
second
painful.
and 1 and you're handing the ball up to him.
It is painful. And, I will say this, there is a slight glimmer of hope that right now Gibson is 9th in total carries, rushing attempts, I should say, in the NFL through 2 weeks. So he is top 10 in that regard. And his yards per carry average isn't terrible for what Gibson can do. However, the Bills have been suffocating the run against their opposing teams this year. 3.3 yards a carry is all that they have allowed against both the Dolphins and the Steelers through 2 weeks. Chances are Washington is going to find themselves in a negative game script yet again against the Bills and Josh Allen and everything that offense can do, as well as that defense putting everything together. It doesn't seem like the game that Gibson's going to start running with the ball and doing it with authority and putting up those fantasy points. If anything, it's a better game for J.D. McKissick. I'm not very high on Gibson yet again. And honestly, if you have him this week, I would look at attempting to trade him before his value starts to sink further.
You hit the nail on the head on that one. I love Williams. I think he's a dude. Yeah, speaking of the eye test, he just looks the part, right? He's a guy, and I'm a big fan. I picked him up early and often in most of my leagues when you could, But to your point on Gibson, it's kind of shocking. I don't know why. I don't understand. I just don't get it. It was there and it's not now, and it's like.
What happened?
What happened was it makes no fucking sense. So it's like,
it doesn't.
And I mean, maybe, and it's all about scheme according to Nagy. And maybe with respects to that, Rivera's over there. He knows something we don't. And that's frustrating the shit out of everybody, as you alluded to earlier. But yeah, I would definitely, I'd be sitting Gibson all day long and starting Mr. Williams as well. And in your little scenario there, you drafted up my good man.
What's the next one you got for us?
I'm going to rattle these off because I think, like you said, so I got two of them for you. Running back, I'm going to start James Robinson from the Jacksonville Jaguars against the Arizona Cardinals. Okay. I'm going to sit Mr. DeAndre Swift against the Ravens. And then on the wide receiver portion, we talked about Sterling Shepard. And again, these are comparisons, and I like to compare them after the fact and see how they do stack up against the production afterwards. We didn't do that this week, but Stephen, last week I went back and showed how we did, and I was like, and I fucking was awful with Robert Tonyan, who had 4 targets with 1 catch for 2 points or whatever.
You were
he
off
did
by
great
a week
last week or last night. With that being said, I think I would start Shepard over Mike Evans this week. If you were interested. So James Robinson over DeAndre Swift, and sitting Mike Evans and starting Sterling Shepard. And I know I'm just looking at it from that perspective. I know we're pressed for time, but I think those are some guys that you may want to look at. Try to make some plays. Now is the time where you try to win some games with using your brain. And it's not just on your drafting. Now you got to try to look at, do some research, come to One Up and go to wherever else you go. But definitely come here to hear what we have to say. Mr. Johnson over here, he has every stat in the book. It's in that brain of his over there. And that's why he keeps himself in that black box there. It's trying to keep all those thoughts in there. So
had to keep it for airflow today. Had to open up the door. No, I mean, honestly, the Evans situation again, showing that low floor, high ceiling situation that he brings to the table, and his 1 yard touchdowns that he was back on again last week. I don't know what it is with that dude, and just collecting every red zone touchdown on that team. But yeah, he's definitely a risk play, especially I don't know who Ramsey is going to defend. That's going to be the fun part, is who Ramsey is going to defend. And if it's going to be Evans, is it going to be Godwin? Is it going to be Brown? Is it going to be a mixture? Because he likes to follow people around. So that's the big question, is who exactly is he going to lock in on?
I have a quick question for you. Speaking of the Rams, and I know, what are your thoughts on Robert Woods? Is he fallen off, man? Do you think he's a guy that's is that more not in sync with Stafford, or Van Jefferson is taking his place? What do you think it is?
I'm not entirely worried about him right now. He had 9 targets last week. That's a fairly healthy amount. He had a touchdown week 1. Not necessarily the production in the target share that you'd expect out of a guy that is drafted where he was drafted in that 4, 5, 6 round range. I'm not worried yet. Obviously, you wish that Cooper Kupp and his role would be what Woods has with Stafford. But in due time, I think the teams are going to get a little bit smarter about how they approach the Rams offense, and it will ultimately end up benefiting Woods with people kind of honing in a little bit more on what Cooper Kupp does for that offense as it stands right now.
Do you like Sonny Michelle?
I don't. I don't think Sonny Michelle is a running back that brings anything of strong value to the table. He's just a guy in my mind. I don't think there's really much there that says, look out, here's an asset that you can rely on long term on any roster. I mean, is he a stash type of guy if your roster is deep enough? Yeah, sure, why not? You never know what might happen, especially if this injury continues to linger for Henderson. But at the same time, not necessarily something that you want to pin hopes and dreams on in terms of trying to solve a running back conundrum that you may or may not be facing early on here. I've got 2 more. I've got 1 start quarterback, 1 sit wide receiver. The start quarterback is a guy, I hate Thursday night games, but I feel good about this one. Sam Darnold, Carolina Panthers quarterback against the Texans. Texans have put up some respectable numbers on paper. You can't fault that through the first 2 weeks against Trevor Lawrence and Baker Mayfield. But the faults among the secondary are starting to be exposed a little bit. Let's not forget that Houston was a bottom 5 team in pass defense a year ago. And I think that Sam Darnold is going to be the one to break open that door and expose the Texans for what they are. Had over 300 yards and 2 scores last week. I think he has a big night on Thursday night. Sit-wise, man, I loved this dude. I loved him. But I do not see this going any better week 3, and that's Corey Davis of the New York Jets going up against the Broncos. Man, that first week, 5 catches, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns against the Panthers. Then he hits a wall last week with 2 catches for 8 yards, finishing behind Elijah Moore and whatever the hell a Braxton Berrios is in targets. And here we are up against a Broncos defense that just allowed 192 passing yards per game through the first 2 weeks. Jamison Crowder probably back this week after being a healthy scratch. And Kyle Fuller on the opposite end defending Corey Davis. I don't like this at all. Pain.
Not that we need him.
But I don't see Corey Davis breaking through this week and getting back to the week 1 production that we saw out of him. The Broncos are good. They are a very good team. They know what they knew what they were doing when they put Teddy under center and what they have with that defense. Like, the Broncos are probably going to the playoffs this year just based on what that defense can do. And now that the offense has some stability that isn't turning over the ball.
Teddy's completing 77% of his passes. I mean, their efficiency, they're getting it from everywhere. Defense, offense, they're tough.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And, we'll see what it brings, but I don't think that Zach Wilson's going to be seeing more ghosts out there week 3 with the way that the Broncos and Vic Fangio will be throwing schemes at him. A couple questions before we head out of here. Chase over Shepard? Jamar Chase? Or Chase Edmonds? That's the question.
I'm thinking receiver here. I think he's talking Jamar Chase.
I'd start Shepard.
Me too.
Yeah, I think that's let's go in there. Fields or Brady?
I'm going. Come on. I mean,
You gonna go homerism here?
I can't. I mean, as much as I just dogged Brady, just saying I wouldn't start him against the Rams. I would start if those are my 2 options. I'm starting Brady over Fields, just because I don't trust Matt Nagy at all, at all.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
what about you?
You got to start Brady. The weapons that he has, he could easily break through that Rams defense. And
I'm looking forward to that game too, though. That'll be a fun game to watch.
That could be a preview of the NFC Championship.
Yeah,
just
right.
put into that perspective here early on week 3. Josh Allen and Saquon for Aaron Jones and Calvin Ridley. Which side of that trade?
I would, if I'm trading Josh Allen and Saquon, I am extremely excited to get Jones and Calvin Ridley and his start Carr. Like, what the fuck? Like, I'm doing that all day long. Like, right? Like, am I missing something?
No, you're not. Josh Allen has shown that he is not getting off to the start that everyone anticipated him to, and he's starting to show more of his 2019 numbers versus his 2020 numbers. People aren't talking about it yet, but he's not the guy that people anticipated, and he needs to turn it around here quick. So I mean, we'll see what happens. But I'd make that trade too. I'd take that Aaron Jones, Calvin Ridley side any day of the week for sure. All right, well, that's going to do it here for this episode of One Up Fantasy. We've got plenty to talk about. And I'm sure next week we'll have even more with everything going on.
I can't wait to go back and see my take on Brady and my Brady and Jones take. We'll see how that plays out. But don't forget, waiver wire, depending on where you are, you got about an hour out here in the East Coast. So get your shit straight and don't fuck up. But make sure you get that situated, get your money right, and do what you got to do.
Absolutely. Get those bids in, get those claims in, no matter what you've got going on. Make sure you got it all set, and you are all set for week number 3. In the meantime, be sure to watch Keeping It 100 tomorrow night on TTNL and Shy City Sports with Draft Dr. Phil and Shane, the smartest man, breaking down some Bears and Browns, some injured Browns. That's the best way to put it. Hell, there's no better time to face the Browns than right now.
That looked like it hurt like hell when he went to tackle that guy. Oh my goodness! But hey, let's go Bears tomorrow night. TTNL. We're going to talk about it. 8:30 Eastern. Let's do it.
And Justin Fields, potentially Justin Fields' first NFL start on Sunday. Can't wait. Cannot wait for that. Don't start, Foles, for the love of God. Please don't do it. I wouldn't be shocked at anything at this time of the year, but we'll be back next
People
Tuesday
lose their
night.
fucking mind.
A rant for the ages, and I cannot wait if that does indeed happen.
That'd be great.
But we'll be back same time, same place
yeah.
next Tuesday night, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central for some more One Up Fantasy. He's Chris Jackle. I'm Stephen Johnson. Thank you for watching. Be sure to check out the podcast, subscribe, rate, wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, we're everywhere you listen to podcasts. So until next week, have a great week. Bear down, win this week. Good luck, folks. And we will talk to you next Tuesday night.